Hi friends, this is Caitlin, and unfortunately my family lost someone very important to us last week, and I really wasn't sure if I wanted to put out a video, to be honest with you, but I love how this card turned out so much, and I got so much closure and peace through making this card that I really thought it was worth sharing it with you today. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you guys today and definitely go over the details of this card, but also open up to you a little bit about what's been going on for my family and my life. And I hope that that's okay with you guys to do something a tiny bit different this week. I'm starting out this card with a piece of the Distress watercolor paper, and I'm using the rougher textured side. And I just took a piece of plastic packaging from one of my stamp sets, and I am stamping on some Distress ink cubes in Speckled egg and old paper, as well as spraying on some antique linen Distress spray and some clean water. And I am pressing that watercolor paper down into the ink. So, and then going in and drying it with my heat tool, which is also what I use when I'm embossing. And I'm just going to layer that up a few different times, kind of changing up the mix of colors. You could see when I didn't spray the water into that one, it left kind of square shapes from the cubes on my paper. So I definitely went in a few different times. If that happens, you can always spray some extra water onto the paper and get that ink moving around. That's what I love about the whole Distress line and it all being very water reactive. I also decided that the Speckled egg wasn't showing up as blue as I was hoping for, so I also went in with my Salvage Patina spray paint. Spray stain, that one, and added a few different coats of that in with some water too, just to make sure that the blue was showing through a little bit more than the green, just to kind of change it up and really play up that texture. And you can see the more layers that we go, the more the actual texture of the watercolor paper shows through. And now I'm going in with some clear, clean water and using my heat tool to go over that just a little bit, which will help give kind of that ring effect around your splotches before you pick up the extra water with your paper towel, which is something that I've seen Tim Holtz talk about a lot over on his YouTube channel. So I wanted to try that out. And I also added some speckles of my Salvage Patina spray stain directly from the bottle pretty much onto that. Then I also wanted to distress the edges. So I took Vintage Photo Distress ink and I decided to trim down my panel. So I only inked up two sides to begin with before I realized I was going to have to trim the other two sides. So I quickly went ahead and trimmed down my panel first and then went back in to finish up my distressing, just taking one of those regular flat old school foam blenders and using it to ink up the edges just to give a more distressed and vintage look to this. So now I'm going in with this amazing floral from Honeybee Stamps, and this is actually retired. So I do believe that it is not on their website anymore, but if you haven't checked out the retired section of their website, I'm putting a link to that down in the description box below for you. You can find some amazing deals down there. Definitely check it out. Keep an eye on there. They're always adding different things to the sale and retiring sections. These were an absolute steal and I love them so much. I love the florals in this. I love the size of it. It's super hefty. You can make a whole card just using this one image, and the die cuts it out beautifully with the detail around the berries and those little flowers, and I just thought the whole thing was stunning. So definitely worth a try to go check out their retiring section and see if there's anything in there that you can add to your stash for an absolute steal. The original color combination I picked out for these florals just wasn't giving me enough contrast, and so I ended up going back in and adding in a fourth deeper shade, that E33, to the center parts of my petals, and from here on out that'll be the combination that I use on the rest of all of the florals as we're going around this piece. So I ended up with E33, E21, E30, and then here and there just on the very edge of the petals I popped in a little bit of an E000 just to really kind of help create an extra highlight there. With these kind of flowers, you want to make sure that your deepest shades are really towards the center of those petals, and anywhere that one petal is overlapping another, anywhere that those kind of artist drawn lines are, those wispy folded shapes on the inside of each petal, that can definitely be an easy guideline for you so that you know where to bump up those shadows. Coloring this in is definitely a little bit repetitive, so if it's okay, I'm going to take this time to kind of fill you in on why I made this card today. I've heard a lot of people give the advice that it's better to make condolence cards before you need them so that in an emotional time you aren't stuck trying to create. But for my brain, it was actually extremely helpful for me to make this card this week. So about a week and a half ago, my family did have a loss, and I lost my grandfather. Unfortunately, we lived pretty far apart from each other, but I am so grateful that I was able to go visit him with my mom in the fall. If you have been around for a while and seen some of my other videos, you might remember there was one video where I have some very questionable audio because I was filming my voiceover in the car while we were on a road trip, and that's where we were going. So I did get to spend some time with him this fall, and I will always be grateful for that time. But unfortunately, with the circumstances of him passing, I was not able to talk to him for the last couple weeks before he passed. So I did not get to say goodbye. So this card in many ways is kind of a therapeutic way for me to say my goodbyes. And I know that he knows that I loved him. But the action of making this card and being able to kind of just turn off my music, turn off the TV, and just have some alone time and really think about some memories and take some time to kind of process some of my emotions while going through this coloring process, especially because it was really repetitive, was so nice for me. So don't think that just because someone else says, that you can't craft in those times. If you are someone who kind of copes by creating like me, just keep an open mind to it, even if it doesn't turn out perfect, even if it's just something for you that no one else will ever see. It doesn't ever have to be mailed. It can be a personal message from you out into, the universe or whatever it is you believe in. And this card definitely gave me a lot of closure, and I will remember it forever. So I do have plans on sending this to his very, very, very long-term girlfriend who I grew up with, and love, and my heart just goes out to her. So I do want to send this to her. That's the original intent of this card, but through the process of making it, I also feel like I made it for him and I as well. So I just wanted to take that time to share that with you and be a little bit open. I feel like these kinds of cards are something we don't talk about a lot. I haven't seen a lot of videos of people being honest and open, and I understand why. It's a very hard thing to talk about and not a very exciting or happy thing. Obviously, we'd rather focus on those, but real life is real life. And so sometimes, unfortunately, we need to make a sad card. So I'm going in now. I'm holding my die cut image there just for placement, and going in with an anti-static powder tool to treat my watercolor, which is completely dry at this point. Going in with my Versamark clear sticky ink and a little bit of white detail embossing powder, and I'm going to be embossing that thinking of you sentiment right on that corner. It fits perfectly around the florals, depending on which side you kind of angle your flowers at. I knew because this was trimmed down that I was going to want it to go at an angle so that it would overlap and go onto that card base. I used a white card base just to kind of tie in that white border and the white embossing. Anytime you can use the rule of 3, it's always kind of a safe bet. So I went in with my Tombow permanent adhesive roller, and I'm just laying down that watercolor panel nice and centered with that white frame border from where we trimmed it down earlier. Then I decided to go in with a little bit of the 3M foam tape. So this is pretty thin. It's going to give a little bit of dimension without making it too bulky, because I do actually plan on putting this one in the mail. I wanted to make sure that it had some pretty dimension, and I was able to tuck some sequins for embellishments, but I didn't want it to be super thick or get crushed in the post. Once I had that piece taped down, I grabbed some of my Pawsome stamp sequin mixes. You guys know I love those so much. And I grabbed the Sparkling Mint sequin mix, and in there is this one color that's this slightly matted turquoise in multiple sizes, and it just works so beautifully with that Salvage Patina ink. So I thought it added a little bit of embellishment without being a glitter disco party, because obviously that's not the tone of this card, but I think that the colors all tie in so well, and I was so happy with how this card turned out. I think it really does a lot to honor him. It did a lot to kind of heal some stuff in my soul. I know that sounds dramatic, but I also think that if you're here, it's because you love crafting and you understand what I mean. That our crafting and our creating and this community can really help to kind of work us through a lot of different things in life. So I'm grateful that you're here. I am so appreciative that you came to hang out with me today. I hope that you have an amazing week, and as always, happy crafting.